live with it, and let's not put that in the budget if we can manage that. And so, as we move into the other funds, I think we spend a lot of time talking about the general fund. It's, it obviously is the one that captures the most attention, but obviously we have a budget that looks at the other adopted funds as well, and we want to talk about those tonight as well. So, on the preceding pages, you will see tables where our fiscal 20 recommendation is circled. Of course, this is a biennial budget, and so you'll see fiscal 21 numbers as well. But if you look here, you'll see, and the key line is going to be net revenue and appropriations. So basically, if we're returning money to the fund, then that number is not negative, no parentheses. And if we're losing money in the fund, then you have parentheses around it. Unfortunately for 202 and 203, our major streets and local streets funds, those funds are not returning money. But this is not as much of a concern. We'll talk about this when we have the hearings. But for the Act 51 funded funds, we're really on a use it or lose it basis. And so what we have to do is show that we're doing projects, and as we do projects, we can ask for that reimbursement on the back end. You'll see that, if you look at the 202 fund, we've accumulated an $11 million fund balance. And so looking at that larger of a fund balance, we've been accumulating money and not spending it. And so now it's time for us to spend it, and so that's the reason you see that negative figure. The 203 fund kind of follows the same trend. It's a smaller fund, so $4.2 million of fund balance, and again, that's a large accumulation for a fund where appropriations, is equal to your annual appropriations. All right. So the mayor did talk about the street lighting and the rubbish collection funds, and right now this is based on what we're going to recommend as these revenue projections, which cause these funds to remain in the black or remain positive, are based on the higher assessment values. And so again, you'll see that we really don't have a lot of room to work with in 226's fund balance or 219's fund balance. You see that the ending fund balance as of the end of fiscal 18 was $1.1 million, and the ending fund balance for 226 was $1.6 million. And so, again, we don't have a lot to work with there. And so now what we're saying is we really need to look at these assessment values and visit whether or not we can continue. We don't want these funds obviously go in the red. We have to remain fiscally responsible. And so here in your presentation, you see the parcel counts that have led us to the unavoidable conclusion that we now have to, we have a dwindling number of parcels that we can charge this assessment to. I think we all know about the challenge with land bank owned properties. Those properties we don't bill that assessment to, and so really you see this in garbage. You see it on street lighting. Both have a unique challenge. On the garbage side, you can't charge vacant parcels, right? So as you see abandoned or vacant parcels, they can't be charged a special assessment. You can do that on the street lighting side, but on the street lighting side, you have the issue of people able to combine parcels. If I have a multi-unit building, then I can only charge that building once versus twice for garbage. And so you see the numbers here. Normally, we try to keep the presentations high level, but because this is something that we really all need to understand all together, based on the prospect of increasing this assessment rate, I wanted to make sure that you all had this information in front of you. We can provide additional backup information if needed, but what we're doing is we're saying that we're proposing that we need to increase the rubbish collection, the garbage special assessment to $167.47, and then the street lighting one to $109.71. So let me continue on. Let me explain a little bit about the 402 and the 301 funds. 402 fund as you know, is a public improvement fund, and it is funded by a millage. And that one does pay a transfer into the 301, which is our debt service fund. And so, unfortunately, over the past few years, we have been very limited in current projects that we can fund out of the public improvement fund because of the debt service requirements. This year, unfortunately, is not very different. Because right now that the money that is going out of the 301 fund, which as you see is the 2.1 million, is a little larger than the revenue that the 402 fund is bringing in. So right now, every project that we're funding that's current is funded really out of fund balance of 402. The good news is there's a healthy fund balance in the 402 fund, but at some point we're going to have to do something. Tonight, I believe, you will be presented with a loan refunding resolution. One of the things we want to do is look at the loans that are serviced out of the 301 fund and potentially get lower rates to cut costs. So we feel that this is a great first step to start to relieve some pressure on the 402 fund. By reducing rates that the 301 has to pay, reducing the transfer that goes from 402 to 301, and they're hopefully relieving that pressure so that the 402 fund can actually fund current improvements versus paying for the loans that funded past improvements. Now, moving on, I think the 542 fund is relatively flat. I'm not as concerned about the 542 fund. The one thing that we do want to make sure that when we do these projections, we're basing it on a certain amount of volume, inspection volume, building safety inspection volume, plumbing inspection, electrical inspection, that sort of thing. So there are certain assumptions that go in here, and if that volume is reduced, then obviously those, you didn't adjust the fees, you're not collecting as much revenue in that fund. I'm not as concerned about the 542, but as we said before, the water and sewer funds continue to remain an issue. There are two numbers I do want you all to ponder, or make sure that I point out for 590 and 591. The sewer fund ending fund balance. I don't know if you all had a chance to read your CAFRs, and actually, let me take a step back. Let me take a step back and say one thing really quickly. One thing I want to make sure we do is have a Q&A. I'm going to propose to the finance chair that we have a kind of a Q&A. This is more of a ceremonial type of, here is the budget. But what I want to do is have a Q&A so you all can ask me questions directly about the budget before we get into the hearings, and we'll talk about this hopefully more in finance committee. But one thing I do want to make sure is very clear to you all is why the sewer fund balance is at 16.4 versus the 37 it was when we ended before we ended fiscal 18. And so if you go back to the audit report that was provided by Yo and Yo and the finance department back in January, it talks about how the sewer fund balance was negatively impacted because of a new GASB requirement called GASB 75. GASB 75 basically says that you all can't just recognize the liability of what's called the ARC payment, which is your annual required contribution to your OPEB, right? So basically what I'm saying is every year we pay so much money to our retirees in the form of health care, right? And so what had been happening was every year we recognize that annual contribution, and that's what hits our books as a liability. What GASB 75 says is that, wait, you're not going to just recognize your annual contribution, you have to recognize the whole liability. And that hits the enterprise fund, that hit the enterprise funds to a point that the fund balance was restated. So I want to make sure you all have a chance to ask questions and understand this very clearly, because nobody asked those questions while we were talking about it during the audit, during the financial presentation by Yo and Yo back in January. So before before I leave, I want to make sure that this is very clear to you all so you understand exactly what happened here with sewer funds fund balance. So I also wanted to point out the $77.4 million of revenue that's on the books for the water fund. And I want you all to be very clear that 21 million of that was for the forgiveness of the water loan, the dwarf loan back in November 2017. So you remember November 2017, there was a lot of fanfare about the fact that the state of Michigan decided to forgive one of our dwarf loans. This isn't the $77.5 million loan that we just closed on in December of 18. This is one previous to that. So there was a $20.7 million loan forgiveness. We had to count that as revenue. So this is not indicative of the fact that we had a lot of collections come into the water system. We are still in dire shape. And again, I will point you to your CAFRs if you need any more information on splitting out operational revenue, which is the big issue, versus a special one-time revenue that came from the forgiveness of a debt. So I wanted to make sure you all are very clear on that. The negative numbers that we're showing here for the enterprise funds, the 1.7 million, and of course the water at really 5 million. That's serious. And so, as the mayor talked about, and Liana pointed out, we are feverishly trying to get those projects going, and you'll see some in front of you this evening. We're feverishly trying to get those projects going so that when once we get them implemented, particularly the water meter project, we can address our non-revenue problem, right? That's a serious problem. And again, we appreciate the cooperation that you all have given us so far, and we anticipate that there will be continued cooperation because this is something that will continue to dog us financially. So we are not recommending any water rate increases, despite the fact that you see the negative numbers that you saw on the previous slide. We're not recommending any increases. But what we are saying again is that we have to be very, very focused on this. And again, the administration will bring you updates, and of course, we'll bring you ideas and resolutions as we have before on how do we continue to remain on top of this. I think that fiscal year 20 is going to be very critical because that's our one opportunity to fix this non-revenue problem. And again, in last year's presentation, we did show a slide that kind of shows what that problem is. If you can't account for 40% of what goes through your water system, then you can't bill for it. If you can't bill for it, then you definitely can't collect on it. And if you can't collect on it, but you're already paying for it, that's a problem. And so even though usage has dwindled down both on what's gone out of the system versus what's come into the system, we still have that gap, and we have to figure out what we're going to do about it. And so, very quickly, just as a reminder to close the loop for everyone, there are other funds that you all don't adopt. The Fringe Benefit Fund, which is a 627 fund, IT, which is 636, Fleet, which is 661, and the Self-Insurance Fund, which is 677. Those you all don't adopt. We will be sharing during the hearings, particularly, like for instance, when IT comes up during the hearings, we will be sharing those departmental budgets like we did last year, but they aren't part of your adopted package. Now, also, of course, on top of that, the 274 and the 296 funds, which are the special revenue grant funds, also aren't included as well because those are, we amend the budget as we get grants. So that's the reason those aren't included. And finally, in your books, when you finally receive them, you will see that there's a 208 fund, which is parks, 265, 583, and 246 funds will be included. But since those are smaller, we didn't have a slide up for those particular ones, but you will see those because they still have to be adopted. So again, this isn't really a Q&A session. We'll have a Q&A session, hopefully, if we can work that out. And Finance Chair and I continue to try and finalize the hearing schedule, at least for next week. So, once you get the books, please review them against the presentation. I actually want you all to ask questions because, again, this is my, this next week is my last week here. And, I do have to acknowledge what the mayor said. I am grateful, I'm very grateful that you see the hard work and heart and effort that I put into the city. I feel like I'm leaving a part of me. And I appreciate that you appreciate it because it is from here. And I say that to you all as well. We have not always had great times, but like I said in my letter, I do appreciate the fact that when I stood before you in November, I was approved unanimously. And, I hope that, this is my second budget cycle and I'm gonna pat myself on the back. I got 2 done. I did propose 2. My predecessor only got through 1. But I do want to, even though we haven't always had, it hasn't always been kind and friendly, and we've had some bumps in the road, I do want you all to understand that I did really leave a piece of my heart here. And what I did wasn't just for the money or just for me. It was really for the residents of the city of Flint. And I do consider myself a lifelong Flintstone. And I appreciate everything that you all have done to help me be successful, CFO. So with that being said, what I'm going to humbly ask first is that the finance chair, I don't think we want to get into a back and forth here, but I would ask for a discussion item. Maybe we can do that in finance committee, a quick discussion item so we could talk about what if we can meet next week and do hearings. I know we've had some conversation about, you and I have had conversation, you've had correspondence with the members of council. I'd like to see if we can get that locked down because I would like for us to get a few hearings out of the way next week, if at all possible. And so with that, I turn it over to Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
At this time, thank you, Mayor Weaver. Thank you, Mr. Newsom. At this time, I would entertain a motion
Madam
from
Chair.
a member of the Flint City Council to receive the proposed budget. Councilman Mays.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move that as to 190107 presentation fiscal years 2019, 2020, and 2020 and 2021 biannual proposed City of Flint budgets. I move that we receive them at this time.
Thank you. There's a motion.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Davis.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. You don't have any discussion. No. Okay. So we don't have.
Point of order.
What's your point of order, Councilman?
It can be discussion.
Ms. Fields.
I'm not sure what is being passed out, but unless that's the actual budget, okay, I think that motion needs to be amended because we've not been presented with the actual budget yet. Is that what's being handed out, Mr. Newsom?
Madam Chair,
Councilman Mays.
the presentation that this motion was made on was the presentation we just received.
Right.
In that, I'm glad to see the budget, but if it hadn't been passed out, I was going to still push for the presentation of the budget to be received. I would like to say that, as we go through the budget hearing processes and we look not only at the fiscal year 2020 and 21, but beyond, I'm eager to get into that process and have discussions. I also wanted to say at this time that I've been in this city a long time, and I, too, Mayor Weaver, and to your administration, can appreciate the work and the timing in which Mr. Newsom came in. Unlike Mr. Newsom's letter, I don't think I'm gonna resign for whatever reason. And so my position is this. That's a serious department, Mayor Weaver and Mr. Newsom. And I'm looking at Don Steele as well as Mr. Newsom. And I don't say never until we get to the 29th leaving. And I'm looking at, what's her name, Mr. Newsom?
Ms. Dumpre.
Miss Dumpre.
Dumpre, yes.
Sitting in that seat. And I've seen in this city many consultant agreements. I've seen many contracts, and I wouldn't care if Ms. Steele and Mr. Newsom was overseas or in New York or in Georgia. But I'm going to be proposing that if need be, in order to support you until we get things in place, I have no objection to some type of contract for either and or both Don Steele and Mr. Newsom, whether they're here every day or not, until we get that department on track, and we'll be talking more about it. I'll be supporting this motion to accept or receive the presentation as it relates to the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Mays?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Guerra?
Yes.
Ms. Fields?
Yes?
Ms. Winfrey Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Briggs?
Yes.
Ms. Worthing?
Yes.
The vote is 8 yes, 0 no to receive the budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I
You mean
will
Madam Clerk?
Madam Clerk, sorry. At this time, I will ask for comments from each council member. You have
point of
5
order.
minutes. What's your point of order?
It says other business on the agenda,
Correct.
and so if I may,
Well, that's going to be next.
that's where we're at.
Councilman
That's
Mays.
what's now. It says other business. I don't see what you're saying.
Well, Councilman Mays, if you notice that there's also not on this final comments. So final comments are now.
Yeah, I don't see final comments. I know in any meeting, the public can address the council, but based upon the agenda. But either way you do it, may I speak?
Sure, Mr. Mays.
Okay. And the reason I wanted the floor, Madam Chair, is because from the letter I read, I didn't read it the day it was issued by Mr. Newsom. I read it later where I could digest it. And, you know, I'm a certain type of person. They said at one point I was going the wrong way on the highway with 4 flats, and when I come back, if I don't, I'll do it now. You know, you apologize, you keep moving, you don't know what happened. You pray to God, you say grace and mercy, you testify in church. We for real, some of us, I am. I don't care what people think and see. If what Mr. Newsom said in that letter is true, and if the accusations, the false information, the allegations, the request to meet with the governor and the Attorney General, if that letter and the communications in this council had something to do with it, Mr. Newsom, I apologize. And I'm here to tell you that everybody involved should apologize, and this is the time to do it. And so that's why I wanted the final comments or other city business, Madam Chair. I don't expect to hear it. You hear my voice echoing through this first ward seat. Folks still might believe the allegations is true, but they ain't. I looked at the last letter, Ms. Fields, and that last letter talked about using money to pay AECOM from the water and sewer fund. Anything water related, you can use water funds. And AECOM was managing water business. And so that ain't gonna hold up. I've dissected all of those allegations. By me being of good attendance, I knew and thought the $6 million would be reimbursed. I'm investigating, had a hearing. I don't know what happened to the hearing yet. I'm subpoenaing folks, getting questions answered, and folks was boycotting the hearing. in my opinion, because they sure wasn't here. So without belaboring the point, because I got months, weeks, and years ahead of me, but it's relevant in this meeting, in front of this administration, in front of that CFO, and the public, that I shouldn't be the only voice up here saying, Mr. Newsom, now I use an old word in the street. You different from me. And I don't know what your business is. I'm still trying to keep in contact with you and Don still in a professional manner, but you ain't gonna see me resign. I ain't studying them. Let's see if they studying what I'm talking about. Thank you, Madam Chair. Apologies and communications is in order.
Thank you, Mr. Mays. What's your request for information?
I'm just trying to understand, are we to ask some questions about this presentation
No.
now or not?
Nope.
Next.
Yep, this is simply to receive it. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Any final comment and/or, I guess, other business? Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have the same sentiments as Mr. Mays about Mr. Newsom. Your service is highly, it's up there. It's very high. Your professionalism is the best. It's a major loss to see a person of your caliber that came in and helped us out of the situation. I can't say out to recovery, to see you walk away. Not by choice, but by ignorance. This body got, from the day one, I kept saying, it don't work like this. Disrespect, blatant, on all sides. It's 9 people up here, including me. Blatant disrespect. No matter who the administration bring is not good enough. She could go get Barack Obama, put him up here, ain't gonna be good enough. So what am I saying? I'm very frustrated. Only one I could change Mr. Newsom, as well as administration, is myself. It take a big person to apologize. Anybody can mouth off and get mad, but the biggest person is the one know I admit I was wrong. This body would never come up to the caliber of, I don't think, of apology. But I can speak for me and me only. I really hate to see what the administration as well as you went through, because not only you going through, but the mayor and the whole administration. It's way out of order. But I'm hoping this day with the chief sitting here, it did something to me to see that statement babysitting, because that's accurate as you could get right there. This body act like a bunch of elected kids, prejudiced kids. And you can be black and be prejudiced, by the way. I'm not talking color. But I will say this. I hope we learn from what happened through you. We got to do better. It's mandated. We do better. I hope this budget passed. It's clear that the administration trying to move the city forward. The administration is not an enemy. Whatever behind the scenes, keep articulating that they got to be the check and balance of administration that's against the city. We ain't gonna make it. This crisis is not over. Mr. Newsom, I thank you for your service, but I'm not the one that bite my tongue. I was called a yes man. I'm not that. I owe nobody nothing but to love them. We can't continue to lose quality people as the administration and the mayor brought in. It's really disheartening for the city, and especially for me. Thank you for your service, and I'm done. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Guerra.
Yeah, Mr. Newsom, before you leave, I want to thank you for your service to the city of Flint. I think that you've done a fine job, and I hope wherever you go, you continue doing a great job for your community. And at this time, looking how tight the budget's going to be, and keeping in mind what recently has happened with the Locals Officers Compensation Board, I would like to make a motion that we deny the wage increases and the benefits from the Local Officers Compensation Commission.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Ms.
Madam Chair, I
Ward?
second that.
It's been moved and seconded.
Madam
Is there
Chair.
any discussion? Councilman Mays?
Yeah, Madam Chair. I look at the recommendations from the Local Officers Compensation Board as 2 separate things. So I'm going to make a substitute motion, and my substitute motion is going to be that, well, maybe I won't. Let me slow down. I'll do it this way. I'll be voting no to deny that. because I support the wage increase for the mayor. It went from 91 to 125, I think. At the most, 95 to 125, but I think it was at 91. I think from talking to Ms. Brown, our keeper of the records, and the honorable clerk, that you could see where Woodrow Stanley was at 105,000, I think. But we were in emergency manager law for years. I think dating back to 2011. This is 2019. Can you imagine if I was still working for General Motors and the cost of living and things went up and I didn't get a raise, I'd be on strike. There's nothing wrong with an increase after 10, 15, 20 years. I wouldn't care if the mayor's salary was up at 154 or 170,000, because I'm not voting for a salary for Mayor Weaver. I'm voting for the office of mayor of the city of Flint, the office, not the person. I'm not advocating for Councilman Mays to be at 48 or 54,000 with attendance requirements to come to meetings and be in my office. I don't have none now. I can come if I want to, don't show up if I want to, don't return calls if I want to, and I'm getting paid. Ain't no requirements. My position is, if you got a council who have other jobs, some of them worked in General Motors in the past, some of them school teachers, some of them professors at college, some of them teach and do different things. And we neglect city business. We don't meet but 3-4 times a month, and business is piled up. Agenda items is passed. And then we get elected. When we get elected, you don't know if I'm smart or dumb. But if I had a staff person like in Detroit, Chicago, Los Angeles, my staff person might be smart and could advise me. So I've for 30 years been an advocate of full-time counsel with a staff person. For 30 years. This ain't nothing new. Check the record. I stood and said this on the microphone during public comment before I was a councilman. I'll be voting no to reject that. And Mr. Guerra, I wish you would have split them up. Now, why would you vote no on the mayor's salary unless you proposing a higher one? I'll vote no on the council salary because we was at 21,000 before the emergency manager. And I'll say to that local officers compensation board, it's an insult to hand me $1,000. Keep it. Keep it. And I don't need retirement if I win a 4-year term and then lose in the 5th year. Give me the money now. So I don't think they know and look at it what I know. And so my position is this: I almost made a substitute motion to accept the mayor's and reject ours. So Mr. Guerra, I don't know where this is coming from. In order for this motion to pass, it's going to take 5 or 6 votes. I hope they ain't here today. You don't get the mayor and folks up here. We could have waited for that. But now it's here and we're talking about it. I'll be voting no, and then I'll make substitute motions. I don't even think we done had time to deliberate this, Mr. Guerra. Now, you can come back and table it, but it ain't no need to vote no at this time. I urge my colleagues not to pass this thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mays. Ms. Fields?
I did want a little clarification on this motion if Mr. Guerra included all of the recommendations for both mayor and council in that motion.
Was all wage, can I clarify? The motion was for all wage increases and benefits made by the local officers compensation commission.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to say that in terms of these raises, since I've been on council, with the exception of the general police department and through collective bargaining, the fire department and the sergeant's police department. Nobody in this city, or let's say no regular employees, okay, have gotten raises. I believe appointees have, and I think I've asked for a referral. I haven't gotten yet about which raises have been given, but I think...
Point of information.
What's your point of information?
Didn't we approve some collective bargaining agreements for employees that had some gains?
Your motion is denied. Thank you. Ms. Fields.
I stated which ones collective bargaining, when I was speaking, Mr. Mays, which ones we had given raises to. But I feel that the staff at the city, we know everybody is short-staffed. We know people are doing multiple jobs. I believe people are working outside of their classifications because there just aren't enough people to do the jobs, to do the work. And while a couple thousand per council people, per each council person isn't a lot of money, a 40% raise for the mayor is quite a bit of money. And I just don't feel that we should be giving elected officials raises while we're not able to give the general bureaucrat that's down here doing the work day in, day out, when we can't afford to give them raises. So I'll be supporting against the raises.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Fields, Mr. Davis.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Ms. Worthing, I have you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to say this, and I mean what I say. Take it out of love if you choose. Ain't nowhere in the world I'll support denying an increase. We don't have quality people up here as it is. You get what you pay for. I learned that a long time ago. I buy the best. We need council people. We need a pay raise. Let me back that up, restate that. The mayor came in a situation that was dire to everyone here. There's a lot of people that died. You get what you pay for. I remember a year ago when we came here, it was conversation about the mayor not having security, the mayor not having finances for books and just petty stuff. You denying it. That our mayor need an increase. Way more. I'm like Councilman Mays. Yes, redo that proposal and increase the mayor's income. Now, when it comes to council, I got my own money. I got my own insurance. Check the record. It's not for me. It's the quality of the people up here. That's why the mayor and the administration have such a hard time. We could afford to get better quality people up here if that pay was quality enough so somebody could avoid working two jobs. People get up and walk out. People don't stay to the end of a meeting. And I can say it because I haven't missed zero vote. I never missed, I haven't been late no day or been absent no day because I take it serious. You raise that pay up to where serious people, whoever it is out in the audience, want to govern this city the right way without a prejudice, they would now can afford to not have an extra job and sit up here and do this job right. Preconceived ideas where you're not manipulated. You need quality people up here. You get what you pay for. We got people that's working jobs, and if I'm broke, I'm just barely getting by. I got to make some wise decisions. A lot of high-profile stuff we have to decide on. We need quality people. Pay them. Ain't this paid below poverty?
It is.
All right then. So who you think gonna give up a real job and come for a poverty pay other than for pride or a hidden agenda? We don't need that no more. Thank you for the compensation board for that increase. But how dare you to try to deny the mayor an increase? And I'm done and I yield the floor.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Worthing.
I, too, have talked to many employees and people in my ward, and no one is in favor of this raise. Council did get restored to what it was before the emergency manager. However, a $34,000 raise for the mayor, that's more than what most in the city of Flint make in 1 year. That's 36%. That's quite a bit. I cannot in good conscience pass that, also given the fact that employees in the city have not gotten raises and are not making what they need to be.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Councilman Mays, you have 18 seconds.
18
I'm just saying,
seconds.
Councilman
Come
Mays,
on, Ms.
please be
Galloway.
fair.
However many seconds I got, I'm going to use them.
Thank
But
you.
listen to this. Ms. Fields and Ms. Worthen, we the ones who can raise employees' salaries, not the local officers' compensation board. You mixing apples and oranges. You didn't give employees raises last year, that's your fault. You can do it this year. This is for officers, elected officials. You're missing the point. That's your charge. Mr. Guerra, I move to table this until we have a discussion in committee meeting.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Davis,
I second.
it's been moved and seconded to table. Is there discussion on the table of the motion? Ms. Fields?
I believe there's a certain time limit on accepting or rejecting this, or rejecting it. We don't technically have to accept it. And if we table it, unfortunately, I believe it goes past the date. I think it'll automatically go into effect tomorrow if we don't vote on this tonight. So I won't be voting to table.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Mays?
Oh, Councilman Mays, was he trying to slip one in on y'all? Because if you table it and don't vote tonight, it go into effect tomorrow. No, that ain't what Councilman Mays was trying to do. Councilman Mays know that the local officers' compensation board met again, and they made another filing. Ms. Fields don't know if it goes into effect tomorrow or 30 days from when they've met the second time. She don't know that. So through you, Madam Chair, to the city attorney, we don't know if any of us know that. But what we do know is that we vet this stuff in committee and we don't just vote off the floor. Mr. Guerra, you've done something that's wherever and whoever you talk to, if you come in up with in your own mind, you done made a motion on something that ain't been properly vetted by this council. Maybe we would have vetted it last time, but the last meeting was adjourned for lack of a quorum. Were you there? That's why I get so mad about council people leaving meetings, ain't here, falling asleep at meetings, and can't get the business done. And then they run in here and make motions and say what they will and won't vote on and ain't vetted it. Maybe they had a round robin and talked illegally outside of a meeting or sent letters or emails to each other, but it didn't happen in an open meeting. So what you mean you won't table? You can table, Ms. Fields. You can discuss it in committee. You can recess this meeting and come back at 7 or 8 o'clock and be in the same meeting. It's 7 or 8 ways to do business if you understand procedure. Now, Ms. Galloway, you might be the swing vote here. And Ms. Galloway, I hope you do vote to table, and Mr. Guerra, you too, because you can recess this special meeting, go discuss it in committee, and unrecess this meeting at 8 or 9 o'clock tonight, and tomorrow ain't a deadline, Ms. Fields. So every time Ms. Fields say the sky is a shade of blue, I'm going to say it's a good-looking blue with clouds. So if you hear what I said, Ms. Fields, don't run that on this council about we running a deadline, because we still got the opportunity to recess, discuss properly, get the right details from Ms. Wheeler, Ms. Brown, and others, and then come back out of recess after committee meeting. Hello. Thank you. And I did ask Ms. Wheeler something, and if she don't know, that's going to give you more reason to recess. And, don't, Ms. Fields, I'm a mechanical man. Council, don't listen to that.
Is there any further discussion?
Do you want me to
Oh,
comment on
Mr.
that?
Oh, yeah. I'll get you Mr. Griggs and then Ms. Worthing after we hear from our attorney.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
Can I hear from the attorney first? It was in my script.
Did you listen to what I said? I said, I'll see you, Mr. Griggs and Ms. Worthing, after we
Oh,
hear
I
from our
heard what
attorney.
you said.
Okay.
That's why I called the point. But, you know, Madam Chair, I'm eager to get my questions answered.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the Flint City Charter 1-502B, it's a 30-day period from the time that the actual recommendation is filed. In this case, the Local Officers Compensation Commission met a second time, and I believe they did a new filing, which I was conferring with Ms. Brown to see what that date was. I believe it may have been March 19th. So, like I said, if it's an amended one, like I said, it would be my understanding that it would be the new date for
The
the
new
30.
30 days.
Right.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Griggs?
So that ain't true about tomorrow.
Since Councilman Mays brought up meeting times, my constituents in Ward 8 agree with me. We shouldn't have any meetings.
Mr. Griggs, just so you know, the motion on the floor is to table, so
Well,
the
Mr.
discussion.
Mays brought up meeting times, people leaving meetings. I'm addressing that. 9.5 hours is too long for a meeting. Our meetings should-
Mr.
Our meeting
Griggs,
should only last 4
Mr.
hours.
Griggs.
Point of order,
What's your
Madam
point of
Chair.
order?
I need to hear him out. That's relevant to the discussion, the table. It is in my
Oh, my
mind.
goodness. Mr. Griggs, right now, we are on a motion to table. Would
Point
you
of
li-
order, Madam
What is
Chair.
your point of order, Councilman? Mays?
Rule on whether what he's saying is relevant. If you say it ain't, I believe it is, I'm gonna appeal you. I want to hear what he got.
It's not relevant.
Okay, I appeal
There's
the
a
ruling
motion
of the
to
chair.
appeal the ruling of the chair. Is there a second? Mr. Davis has been moved and seconded. You guys, we are discussing in a special meeting that is supposed to be about the mayor presenting her budget. We are in a meeting right now to discuss whether we are tabling or no. Anything outside of whether you're doing that and what relates to that is not relevant. And that is the reason for my ruling. Is there any further
Yeah, Madam
discussion?
Chair.
Councilman Mays.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we done disposed of the business as to relates to the presentation of the budget. We done did that. Now we on other business. And on other business, a motion was properly made by Mr. Guerra to deal with the salaries. Mr. Griggs is 100% right in my mind. You can't discriminate. If I mention and talk about meetings and her motion is not to postpone because a meeting tomorrow, I couldn't hardly hear what he was saying about meetings and you was interrupting him. You wrong. When you give a man or a woman or a council person the flow, sometimes you got to be quiet. You can't read his mind and see where he was going to go with that and how he was going to end up. I'm pretty sharp, and I couldn't because you kept walking over him. I rule you out of order. And I say, I want to hear what the man got to say. You wouldn't even let him get off first base. He ain't got to appeal you. He might not know, but I do it for myself. I do it for him. I do it for anybody. You were wrong. I will be voting no on your ruling. And I hope you, in the future, let us hear what these folks got to say. Just because you the chair, you can't get a flow and interrupt folks after a minute and a half or 30 seconds. I was trying to figure out where we're coming from. It's important to me. I'll be voting no. You ruling wrong.
Is there any further discussion? Ms. Fields?
I'd like to say that while I understand where Mr. Griggs' question is coming from, as far as at this point in time, when the motion is to table, those comments were made on the previous motion by Mr. Mays. So I think the chair is correct at this point in time on this particular appeal. And I would suggest that after this appeal is dealt with, after the vote to table is dealt with, if we go back to the other motion, that is the time to bring up that concern.
Is there any further discussion? Ms. Worthing?
Until the chair does not discriminate and then makes everyone speak on the issue at hand, then I'm going to not vote in favor of the chair. It's discriminatory to allow one person to disparage other council members, say whatever they want, and then immediately say to another council member, oh, that's off topic. It's got to be fair.
Mr. Griggs?
I believe I got my point across. I don't want to hear any more rambling on this.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Mays, you speak one time on an appeal, and you have. And so to
point
answer,
of order.
what's your point of order,
Where
Councilman
you
Mays?
getting that from?
Councilman Mays, that's the rules under.
No, it ain't in our rules. It might be Robert's rules from Coco, but our rules say we speak twice for a maximum of 5 minutes. Council rules
Not a-
supersede Robert's rules. They don't? You think they don't? I'm gonna prove you wrong again. We always
Ms. Wheeler.
speak twice on a motion, and that's our rules. I ain't studying Coco's
Where's my
and
appeal?
and
Where's my
and
appeal?
what you
One
going off of. You learn that over at Mott
find it.
on Robert's rules. Our
Thank you.
rules, we
Look, I
speak
got-
twice on a motion, Miss Galloway. You fumbling the ball on that chairmanship that you think you took from me. Yeah.
No, I didn't. Can you believe I didn't? Give me 1 second, y'all.
I don't even have to look. Our rules, we speak twice on a motion. I don't know what you're looking for. You ain't gonna find it.
Wait a minute, I'm
I
sorry.
can show you what we do on a motion. I ain't studying what Coco talking about.
I'm talking about the appeal. Mr. Davis, what's your point of order?
Council Rule 7.1.
Parliamentary inquiry.
What's your,
I believe there is, and we had all been in agreement and had understood through our sessions, when an appeal is on the table or appeal is on the floor, there is no additional point of orders until that appeal is resolved.
No,
I'm looking for my appeal. I'm so sorry, you guys.
Right.
Did you understand that, Ms. Galloway?
I did.
Thank
got-
you.
You left. You can appeal and appeal.
Give me 1 second, you guys. I'm sorry.
They left. They didn't need it. You can do.
I want to apologize to you guys. An appeal is not deemed to be a regular motion. It's its own separate entity. And I apologize, Attorney Wheeler, I think I'm just going to.
Where you reading that at? It's a motion.
It's in Robert's rules.
They all call motions. Some of them is privileged, some of them is main, some of them is regular. That's why we having discussion. It's a motion. Ain't no way you can get around. A motion is a motion. Our rules allow for twice. Robert's rules allow for once. We operating by our rules. First, Robert's rules second. You give them the 7 point.
Yep, 13.
This is where we run into problems in meetings, Chief. People who don't know.
If you guys just give us, one of the things that, our rules do not, they do address, if I'm not mistaken, but if they don't address an appeal of the chair, an appeal of the chair is not like our regular motions. And so where our rules are silent on a motion, Robert's rules takes precedent.
They ain't silent on a motion, no. Read what we do on a motion. They ain't silent. It's right there in bold black
Right.
print. You just trying to make it be your way.
I'm not. So 29.7 says, "Any person who is called to order shall thereupon yield the floor until the president shall have determined whether he or she is in order. Every question of order shall be decided by the president, subject to an appeal by any council person to the council. If a person so engaged in presentation shall be determined by the council to be out of order, that person shall not be permitted to continue at the same meeting except on special leave of the council." And the attorney brought that, that's the only thing we have in our rules that mentions appeal, again.
No, it ain't.
Point of
Okay,
order.
we're,
Y'all
25.1.
Thank you.
Just, we've been doing this for months. You've been here for years. Don't change in the middle of the stream.
Oh, thank you.
In the union, we had
25
past
point
practice.
5.
You just didn't think you learned something.
Thank you. Any two persons have the right to appeal the presiding officer's decision on a point of order, although this is not a point of order, but appeal. This requires one member making or taking the appeal and another seconding or supporting it. Lack of support means the motion fails. If the motion is supported, the council body votes to decide the question. Members have no right to question the decision or ruling of the presiding officer unless they appeal from his or her decision. So, it does not, again, thank you for that, Mr. Davis.
We're going to give you some more. Don't
Council-
thank us yet.
Councilman Mays. So, with that being said, the discussion piece. and how
I
many
appeal
times-
the ruling of the chair.
You
on
cannot
that.
appeal twice
Yes,
in a
you
motion.
can.
No,
We
you
had
can't.
that.
No, you can't.
Seconded somebody because we went over that
You
with
can't.
Coco,
They
Miss
did.
Galloway.
They
You
did. You
embarrassing this
did.
council.
Oh,
You rejecting an appeal. You can't. And Coco told you when Eve and Kate and them left, you can appeal while an appeal. You can't tell somebody they can't appeal you for trying to shut them up. And so we do appeal you because you don't know what you're talking about.
Guys, you know
And
what?
you going to honor it and if it's a second. And your job now is to ask, is there a second to this second appeal? That's your job.
Rule 1.2. The president or chair presiding officer shall, is required to decide all questions arising under these rules and general parliamentary practice, subject to appeal. While on all questions of order and interpretation of the rules and of priority of business, it is the duty of the chair to first decide the question. It is the privilege of any member to appeal from the decision. If the appeal is seconded, the chairperson states his decision and that it has been appealed from, and then states the question thus: shall the decision of the chair stand as the judgment of the council? The chairman can then, without leaving the chair, state the reason for his decision, his or her, after which it is open to debate. The appeal shall be determined by a majority of the council-elect. Again, the chair.
Point of order. It's an appeal on the floor. Your job is to ask her, is there a second? Any council person can appeal any decision of bad ruling.
Councilman Mays, you're out of order.
No, you out of order.
You are.
It's an appeal.
You did-
And your job
we're
is to
in an
ask,
appeal.
is it a second? You refuse to ask, is it a second?
I do because it's out of order.
Okay, then I appeal you refusing to ask, is it a second? That's your job. Everybody know that.
There is an
Galloway.
appeal of the decision of the chair on the floor. Is there a second? There is an appeal of the decision on the chair on the floor. Is there a second? There is an appeal of the decision of the chair on
Madam
the
Chair,
floor.
I
Is-
second.
Councilman Davis. First of all, we all heard and we hear that the appeal does not have the debate in it like the regular discussion items. An appeal gets to speak one time, and while you are in an appeal, it has to be decided before another appeal can happen. With that being said, Mr. Davis, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, you're absolutely correct, but we've been breaching our council rules from day one, and it's imperative that we get together and have a meeting on Rules Committee to correct our breaches,
Yes.
because everything we're doing is in violation of
Right.
parliamentary rule. I yield.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Fields?
I want to say that regardless of what Mr. Mays said, I think the majority of council will recall during our parliamentary training that you cannot do a point of order or a point of information, either one, while an appeal is on the floor. So where we get into trouble, where we have these
You're right.
crazy point of orders and appeals, 6, 8, 10 all at once, is because we have been doing it incorrectly. And we paid for training from a parliamentarian, an expert, who clearly stated, despite what Mr. Mays apparently hears or understands, is that if there's an appeal on the floor, the chair does not recognize an additional point of
Yep.
order or an additional appeal. And that is what we were taught.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Mays.
Yeah, that's what Ms. Fields was taught. She don't speak for me. Really, when you're having a meeting, you should just follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Let council people elected speak. That's all it is. It shouldn't be no blocking a conversation. When Ms. Galloway, maybe you can help get Ms. Fields and Ms. Worthing and others straight. You were in the same meeting that she just described to this public, and when they left, or they didn't hear it, the parliamentarian told them, because I asked a question, I say, if we're in the middle of an appeal, and the chair say, I'm gonna let you speak, and you speak, but not you, can I appeal the ruling of the chair in the middle of that appeal? The answer was yes. And it makes perfect sense. Any decision of the chair that a member feel is unfair can appeal. And you heard that. Herb Winfrey heard it. I don't know where Ms. Fields' name was at, gone again? So it don't even make sense to the public that you can't appeal a ruling of a chair. And I applaud you for taking the appeal, because the appeal is to discuss it and sort it out. Let me explain something. A motion is a motion. You got a privilege motion. A point of order is a privilege motion. It can interrupt the speaker. Point of information is a privilege motion. These other motions is main motions. An appeal of the ruling of the chair is a form of a motion, somebody making it and seconding it. Our rules do discuss that, because our rules, whatever number it is, the clerk is going to get. See, when people need to vote, they need to hear, including you, Ms. Galloway, and that's okay if y'all got something to talk about.
sir.
But the point is this, when the secretary bring the rules back, y'all ain't read the 5-minute rule once. Now, y'all can play this game if you want. Read the rule that tells us how many times we talk on a motion, and it's for 5 minutes, twice. I ain't heard that rule read yet. That's the rule in law. We say that's what's on point. Y'all reading rules that ain't even on point. Read the rule, if you will, Madam Chair, about, and if you don't want to read it, I'll say through you to Mr. Davis, our rules chair. Because y'all ain't read the 5-minute rule and speaking twice yet. That's the one that's on point. Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Davis, can you read that?
Okay, that'll be 7.
Wait. If you would like to read,
I'm sorry.
when your turn comes, Councilman Mays, please finish.
I can say, you can't tell me to finish. If I say through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Davis, you just want to know if Mr. Davis want to talk. Don't tell me what to do. I said politely through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Davis, and your problem is you want to try to sit in that chair and dictate, and it ain't going to happen with Councilman Mays. I'm going to say it again politely. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Davis, can he read that?
No.
Don't tell me to finish.
Madam Chair, may I?
Mr. Davis?
Okay, that'll be Council Rules.
Wait. Go ahead.
Council Rules 7.
Go ahead, sir, I'm listening.
Okay, dash 13. A council member who desires to speak in debate must obtain the floor by being recognized by the presiding chair. In the debate, each member has the right to speak twice for a maximum of 5 minutes, although Robert's rules state 10 minutes if it's a choice by a vote on the same question on the same day, but here you go. But cannot make a second speech on the same question as long as any member who has not spoken and that question desire the floor. A member who has spoken twice on a particular question on the same day has exhausted his or her right to that question that day. So
We in debate.
Mr. Davis, can you read point number 13 under which you are reading that under?
yes,
What does it say? Read
Yes, that's
what
why I
the
just
title,
read.
read the title. You didn't read the title of number 13.
Title 13, resolutions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mays, would you like to continue?
Yeah.
Point of order.
Go
What's your
ahead.
point of order?
Also, it's state resolution, but if you take it over into, we could further that if you want to debate the issue at actual Robert's
Mr.
rule.
Davis, we are not debating.
Don't interrupt him when he's making his point, Ms. Galloway. You give him the flow
Councilman-
back, and now you don't
No.
want to hear what he got to say. That's
not
why
that.
you're messing up at it, and I ain't gonna let it happen. Let that man speak. You done
Councilman
given the
Mays,
flow.
you are
Councilwoman
not
Galloway,
chairing
that's my
this
name.
meeting.
Point of order.
What is your point of
You
order?
can't get a person to flow and interrupt them because you don't want to hear what they
It
got to
wasn't
say.
that,
You out of
Councilman
order, and
Mays.
I'm gonna
You know
appeal you
what?
again if you don't let this man speak. That's why where we at
Throw him out.
now. You can't keep interrupting
He has
folks.
to go.
Madam Chair,
It's crazy. That's crazy.
clarity is in
Let that
actual.
man-
You are out of order.
Okay. I'm
You are
gonna
out of
appeal the
order.
ruling of the chair.
There's no appeal.
Point of
You're out
order,
of
it is
order.
an appeal. And then let the chief come up here messing with me, and I'm gonna sue you, him, and everybody else. I ain't out of order saying point of order. Point of order is always in order. And I said point of order, and you ruling me out of order, I appeal that.
Madam Chair,
You getting
Maintenance of
ridiculous.
order and
You're
debate.
making a mockery
The
out of
public
this meeting.
and city council
Point
are
of
both
order.
subject to the
Point.
disorderly person or persons ordinance section 31-10.
Man, you
And
was
the
a mock-
general
you was
code
making
of
Madam
this
Mayor,
city
please
look
stay.
bad.
This is what our
You
meetings are
making
like
this city
every
look
time.
bad.
Additionally,
you.
Making the city look
The
bad.
chair
Point of
or
order. You got to
presiding
stop
of-
talking when we say point of
what's your
order.
point of order?
You out of order.
You're not.
You didn't recognize the first point. You done interrupted him and then took over the flow, and it's getting like you
Councilman Mays.
emergency manager.
Okay, so, Councilman Mays, you're out of order. I am going to
I
read.
appeal the ruling of the chair. I'm not out of order.
There's an
I ain't saying
appeal.
nothing.
There's an appeal of the decision of the chair. Is there a second? Mr. Davis, it's been seconded. Maintenance of order and debate. The public and city council are both subject to the disorderly person and persons ordinance section 31-10 and the general code of conduct. I want my colleagues to listen to this reading.
We want them to
Thank
listen
you.
to us.
Additionally, the chair or presiding officer has a responsibility and duty to enforce these rules and sanction for the purpose of maintaining
Point of order.
order. Only the chair or presiding officer may determine and rule on who and what is in and out of order. Violations of this rule shall result in removal from the meeting. Mr. Davis, what is your point of order?
point of order is this. That's void when it comes to a violation of the actual rules. I'm trying to state the rules that
This is,
we operate and function in rules.
ridiculous.
The rules, you said it did not have the, when it said resolution of the minutes of speaking. And I wanted to take you over here to Robert's Rule 389, and it says this: no member can speak more than twice in the same on the same question the same day, except in the case of an appeal. Now watch this. The time that you speak is stated right here, and it's just saying 10 minutes. It's twice. It's clarity in here. Our rules don't have clarity.
Madam Chair.
right.
I've been
Madam
waiting to speak.
Miss
done.
Worthing.
I would like to point out that as things got heated, the only officer in the room left, Chief Johnson. Also, the mayor left as this is going on, and Mr. Mays is the mayor's, he is the council person that the mayor condones, and it's his chief backer, and they left. And I get accused of leaving all the time when it's a 9.5-hour meeting, and they couldn't even last 2 hours. It's a shame. I would love to see the mayor stay in the meeting so she understands what goes on in these meetings. It's awful. It's horrible. And it's a filibuster.
Miss
Point of
Worthing.
order, that ain't got nothing to
doesn't.
do with this appeal.
doesn't.
Talking about she
I'd like to
ashamed
keep
of the
going.
mayor. Rule her out
Thank
of
you.
order for
Thank
that
you. You're right,
to me.
Mr. Mays. But
Madam Chair, when
There's-
she finished,
there-
I'll wait. Let her keep talking about folks. When she finish, I'll wait to get the flow. Let her go.
Can I
Madam
finish,
Chair.
please?
please.
First of all, there's should be no point of order acknowledged at this
You're right.
point.
You're right.
And unfortunately, again, there's no officer here. So you'll be hesitant to say you're out of order. What can you do? He's not going to leave on his own. So this is a conundrum, and we have no power right now. So we are just going to operate in chaos because this is a filibuster once again. And I think that the rest of us council people who would like to go to the order of the city should not allow this to happen. No police officer, no quorum. If the chaos is going to ensue, we should not subject ourselves and our constituents to this nonsense.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Mays.
did you give me the floor?
I did give you the floor.
Okay, Madam Chair, anybody who think you can't call a point of order is just don't get it. And there go one of them walking who don't. Ms. Worthy. Here she done took, God bless you.
Councilman Mays.
God bless you, don't interrupt us. Now, she done dogged the mayor out. Done dogged the mayor out and then got up and left talking about what the mayor and them don't have to sit and listen to foolishness. Ms. Galloway, you must, according to our rules, the chair can be out of order. If you say point of order and the chair say I'm not entertaining a point of order, read the rule. A point of order shall be entertained. And if you don't, you can be removed. So that's where your problem come in. You done told Mr. Davis a point of order is out of order. You ain't gonna find nothing in our rules that say a point of order is out of order. That's where the confusion starts. You and Eva and them and Kate and them arguing, you can't do a point of order. A point of order is always in order. And it says that when you do a point of order, everything shall cease talking. Want me to read it? And it says if you don't cease talking, you out of order and you shall be removed. So when we say point of order, regardless of whether you like it, Eva Worthen like it, Kate feels like it, I'm gonna read you the rule. And I'm gonna show you where when you keep over talking us and saying I'm not gonna entertain your point of order, you should have been removed. I'm gonna read it to you. That's where the chaos is at, because y'all don't understand the rules. You're picking and choosing what you want to rule, what you want to understand. Rule 25. Rule 25 is on page 18 of 23. I don't need no help. Let me have the flow, because y'all had it and you could have been and read this. It ain't funny to me. It's embarrassing. That's the Honorable Mayor Weaver. It is. That's what's on my mail, too. I'm the Honorable Councilman Mays. That is the Honorable Mayor Weaver. It says this, Rule 25, the purpose of a point of order is to correct the breach in the rules. When the presiding officer does not correct it, even if it's her breach, or when the presiding officer makes a breach of the rules, a point of order should not be used for minor infractions. These are major infractions, cutting people off in debate. We're in debate. A point of order does not need a second. It can interrupt the speaker. It is not debatable and is decided by the chair. A point of order in bold black print, 25.4, listen. A point of order cannot be ignored by the presiding officer, period. A ruling of agreement or out of order or disagreement must be given. You got to rule one way or another. All debate and or talking shall cease immediately when a point of order is raised in order for the presiding officer to rule. This is what I want y'all to hear. Failure to cease talking shall, it don't say may, failure to cease talking shall result in disciplinary action. Violators shall be removed from the meeting. So when Mr. Davis say point of order, when I say point of order, if you don't follow these rules, Ms. Galloway, and cease talking and rule on it, you shall be removed. It say violators shall be removed from the meeting. It don't say people who think there's violators or people who you think is. It's that simple. Point of order, everything stop. Chair say, what's your point? They said, you rule on it. If we disagree with your ruling, we can appeal. And that's what didn't happen. And it's going to continue to happen until y'all follow these rules. So I'm going to tell you something about rules and understanding law. You can't pick this rule to argue what's happening here. They say in law, that ain't on point. Y'all bringing stuff up that ain't on point. This appeal has to do with you trying to ignore a point of order. Well, what was it? You want the secretary to read it back? Do you know what this appeal is? Because there's 3 of them on the floor. Did you know that? It's 3 of them. And if the secretary kept good records, it's 3 appeals. And this last one is because you say you weren't recognizing a point of order.
Your time is up.
I'll be voting no.
Ms. Fields.
You're wrong.
I want to point out that this wasted time, and I haven't been keeping track, but it's at least been an hour, we have city business to conduct. Everybody's kind of forgotten. What the issue was there was a motion to first reject the local compensation board's raises for mayor and council, and then Mr. Mays wanted to table it. Then Mr. Mays deliberately, I believe, has created this chaos and confusion, as he does during every meeting, in order to get rid of people so we can't vote on this, because I believe the votes were here to reject this raise, to keep everybody offside, and the fact that he continually disrespects the chair, criticizes the chair, which is an absolute no-no, doesn't follow the rules, doesn't follow what we were taught in parliamentary, and it's exactly the opposite of what he claims. Exactly the opposite. And I believe, respectfully, the chair went wrong when she allowed a point of order on the first appeal. That's how you ended up with multiples, which we went over with Ms. Swihart. She clearly told us you are not allowed to do a point of order or a point of information when an appeal is on the floor. So, while I would like to vote on this motion, Mr. Mays is the one who never allows us to get to city business, and that's why people leave. Because we are not here to provide an audience for Mr. Mays. And I also am leaving this particular meeting because this is ridiculous.
You leave all of them.
Thank you. And just for the record, for those of you that, I don't know which one of my colleagues were here when we went to the parliamentarian, one of the things that Ms. Coco said is that there was no appeal inside of an appeal. And when Councilman Mays couldn't get the answer from her that he wanted, he used an extreme example. And she said, everyone must speak. Everyone must speak one time during the appeal. And so Councilman Mays finally said to her, if there is an appeal of the chair, this meeting is adjourned for a lack of a quorum. That was strategic. Great job, Councilman Mays. This meeting is adjourned. Never wants the truth on the record. His extreme was, what if they don't let me speak? What if they don't let me speak? Of course you can appeal if everybody gets to speak and you don't. But he never wants the truth. So we just, 5 minutes? Right, we got to go to the. But you know what he did? He killed the. Well, he didn't, because we got 30 days since it's an amendment. So. And David, I'm saying you're reading the rules, but you're interpreting them differently.